became old-fashioned. It's called a nationalist. And I say, really, we're not supposed to use that word. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist.
There are warning of a potential possibility of violence as far-right groups like the Proud Boys holds a rally in the city.
Mr. Trump added, "So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe."
Racist, fascist, anti-gay.
This is usual. This is a political revolution, and tomorrow belongs to us. Defeat, never. Victory, forever. Hail victory!
We're honoring the founding fathers who were white. We're honoring all of the great white men who are being smeared and defamed and torn down.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
America, at the end of the day, belongs to white men.
That instinct that this is the greatest country on earth survived not only because, in my mind, the joys of American life and culture, its vitality, its variety, its freedom, always outweighed its imperfections, but because I learned that what makes America great has never been its perfection, but the belief that it can be made better.
Patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Love beyond age, disability, sexuality, race, religion, and any other labels. Because the second any of us judge people based on those labels, we're not really being patriotic, are we?
We're a good country, but we have a lot of things that we can improve on, so it's like, it's hard not to let that pride overshadow like a means for improvement, you know?
It's just so amazing to hear that our legal immigrants, they love the United States, and most of them would be able to pass the test to be a U.S. citizen.
Even though we're like very multicultural, at the end we're all like one big family.
True patriotism isn't my country right or wrong. It's my country. When right, to be kept right. When wrong, to be set right.
Nationalism is defined by Webster's dictionary as loyalty and devotion to a nation, especially in a sense of national consciousness, exalting one nation above all others and placing primary emphasis on promotion of its culture and interest as opposed to those of other nations or supranational groups. In the United States, this ideology has a more corrupt effect on people of certain groups. The diverse population of the United States, like Asians, Africans, Arabs, Native Americans, Hispanics, and Polynesians, need to feel and express their trust in this country, and with certain people, they may not feel that they can. Feeling proud of one's country should not make another group feel excluded from democracy. This is why patriotism is a totally different ideology. Patriotism can be thought of more as a love and pride in one's country, specifically lacking the superiority complex. It is historically and generally currently acceptable to call oneself a patriot and take part in the accompanying culture, but this is where patriotism can quickly devolve into nationalism. Patriotism in the United States is about embracing and continuing to fight for a democracy and a freedom for all people. It is important as a patriot that not everyone is awarded the same amount or degree of freedom, and not all are treated fairly under current laws and governance. Patriotism is loving and taking pride in what we've done right as a nation, but also wanting and pushing for improvement as we move forward as a country.
If we look at nationalism in the U.S. from an international perspective, maybe the flaws will become more apparent. For example, since the beginning of the pandemic, crime against Asian people have increased, enough so that New York City had to create its own task force to combat the increase in targeted hate crime. One of the ideas that drives this increase in hate crimes against Asian people is the belief among some Americans that Asian people are less than human and somehow to blame for the state of this country amid the pandemic. We can trace this thought process to nationalism, as the Americans committing the crimes are merely harming citizens of the country under the pretense that if they are Asian, then they are part of the problem and not a part of the country. Another issue we have been facing for many years is that of the anti-immigration policies and attitudes that brew within the ideology of nationalism. From the Build the Wall campaign to labeling Mexican immigrants as criminals and rapists, to banning Muslims, refusing refugees, to caging immigrant children, the nationalist attitude has never been stronger. Donald Trump has even told 4 elected members of Congress to go back to where they came from, insisting they fix their own country before telling the U.S. what to do. This statement, delivered publicly via Twitter, helps to fan the fires of nationalism in the country and encourages the idea that people of color have no place in this country, especially in U.S. politics. Trump's implications that immigrants and people of color are not allowed to work for and improve this country reeks of nationalism, as he spreads the message that other countries are lesser than, therefore immigrants are lesser than.
As we have seen during the 2020 presidential election, the tension between political parties has grown because of ideologies interacting and not meeting a consensus. When watching campaign rallies, or even the first presidential debate, there's a certain hostility between these different groups. When nationalist groups such as the Proud Boys were brought up during the presidential debate, Trump was asked to condemn the extreme right group and its white supremacist members. But instead, his statement energized this group. Trump told these groups to stand back and stand by, and encouraged them to keep up their right-wing agenda. For reasons like this, the United States continues to stay divided and extreme nationalist groups stay alive and in power. This country continues to split as more hate group rallies are uncontemned by those in the federal government. In 2017, the white supremacist rally, Unite the Right, caused injuries to many people of the opposing ideology, who came to stop the extreme protest in Charlottesville. In this situation, Trump said that there were good people on both sides. This statement also did not offer any disapproval of these groups. To keep this country united, we need a leader who will take charge and end the extreme nationalism when it hurts and ostracizes other people of this country. There are peaceful ways to show pride in this country that don't take race or social status into account, like voting and exercising other rights in the amendments, showing support for veterans and those still in service, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and even completing a public service like jury duty can convey patriotism. There are groups and politicians that support the completion of these American tasks, such as the NAACP, prior presidents, and the diverse Americans who fought to keep these rights. The extreme nationalist groups no longer define the United States because it is a country of immigrants and diversity, and it needs to act like such. There are blacks, Asians, Hispanics, Native Americans, Alaskans, and Hawaiian natives who also make up the large percentage of the United States' 328 million citizens. We need to start paying attention to this instead of the idealized image of white America.